Good morning. Today is a gorgeous day outside. If you get a chance, why don't you take a walk down the Great Grove? It's just beautiful. And before we were the caretakers of the Great Grove, the Peoria people had the Great Grove and took good care of it so that it was passed on to us. And we realized we're temporary owners and we'll be passing it on sometime in the future. So we really take good care of our Great Grove. It's so nice to see so many people here today. I see some faces I'm not familiar with. Our summer is a little bit different than the rest of our church year. During the summer, we have different people in the congregation who will pick out a topic or find a speaker, and then that speaker comes in. It's very informal. It's more informational than it is, maybe not quite as spiritual as we usually are. The last two services of the summer, though, will be presented by the Reverend Michael Brown. We'll do one, and then Jennifer Innes, our minister, will be doing a blessing of the animals, and that's my favorite. Thank you for joining us in person and online. If you're new, please wear a name tag. If you're not new and are forgetful and forgot your name tag, we have these wonderfully stylish name tags you can use. We're a very accommodating church. We have hearing assistant devices if you need that, large print Bibles, or hymnals, Bibles. We probably have one of those too. Gosh. That's a word you don't hear from up here very often, huh? We have large print hymnals. We have a scent-free area. So if there's anything that would make your experience with us this morning easier, please let us know. Our church welcomes everybody. We welcome everyone, no matter what their gender identity, race, creed, their political beliefs, and all the other groups that are too numerous to mention. If I mention too many, somebody's going to say, but you forgot mine. So we just welcome everybody. I've heard it say there's only two things that a UU doesn't tolerate well. That's intolerance and devices going off during the service. So if you would please turn your devices to worship mode, everyone will appreciate it. I have a few other announcements. Kathy McNeil is our pianist again, and Kathy has stepped up as a volunteer this summer to fill in as a pianist, and she's been really helpful in picking out different songs. Yesterday was an eventful day. We had a successful booth at the LGBTQ festival yesterday. There were plenty of Skittles and bubbles that were passed out. But more important, our message of loving and welcoming exclusively was heard by a population that is not always welcomed by their church or even their families. And I understand we have some people here in the audience today that met us through the fair yesterday. Next week's service will be presented by Jeanette Gruber, and its title is The Essence of Our Love Relationships, Lessons from the Grieving Brain by Mary Frances O'Connor, PhD. Also, if you have been out and about, you'll see all kinds of stuff coming in the door, and rooms piled high. They look a little bit like my teenager's bedroom with all the junk. But this is all getting ready for our rummage sale, which will be next weekend. So, as a part of how we welcome each other, we take a moment this morning to greet our neighbors. Find someone you've never met, find someone you haven't seen for 10 years, find somebody you came to church with. But I'll give you a few minutes, you can greet each other, and then I'll have Mary play the hymn through one time to give you time to rush back to your seats, and then we'll sing our first hymn. So greet.
Hi, I'm Paul.
Our opening words for today are Look to This Day by, I'm not sure how her name is pronounced, Kaladasa. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence. The bliss of growth, the glory of actions, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. I'd like to invite our membership coordinator up. Regina is going to read our chalice lighting. It's right there.
Love is the spirit of this church, by James Villablanc. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Thank you. I've talked a lot from here about how I feel our church is really about sharing. And it reminds me of a saying that the kids will say sometimes on Sundays, and that's from you I give, from you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. And that's how our church survives. We share with each other, sometimes through energy, sometimes through gifts of time or I'd like a clock back there, and if anybody's got one, you might give it a possession. But we also rely on financial donations to help keep the lights on. We also share our plate with another organization in town. Each month changes. Our social activities group chooses it. And this week it is Neighborhood House. So a third of the loose offering today will go to the Neighborhood House, and they do all kinds of things. They even have a critters meals on wheels. So not only are they helping people, they're helping the animals too. So after the plates have passed, you're welcome to come up and light candles. It's a ritual open to all to light a flame here, one of celebration, of love, of care. It might be a flame of hope, a flame of sorrow, or of remembrance. One candle alone doesn't shed much light, but when we share our joys and concerns, the light springs from that table. Will the ushers come forward now? I would like to take a moment to light 2 candles. One for all those firefighters in Canada that are trying to get our air quality back for us and putting out these fires. And the other, I light that we may all acknowledge our place of being caretakers of the earth and covenant with others to be responsible for the planet. We'll hold one more moment in quiet for all of our joys and sorrows that remain in our hearts and are unspoken.
Hi, Paul Resnick.
And now, as our tradition, we will sing the children out. They will go into the back to have some childlike activities. Our speaker today is Paul. He started at the age of 16 and spent a summer with the Youth Conservation Corps in Davenport, Iowa, where he worked with other teens building trails, clearing trails, picking up garbage, and listening to Aldous Leopold's words during lunch breaks. He became a committed environmentalist that summer. In the spring of 2000, Paul planted a 4-yard wide by 30-yard wide prairie in his backyard. Since then, the diversity of plant, insect, and animal life in his prairie patch has been astonishing. In the summer of 22, Paul was accepted as into the Master Naturalist Training Program. He is a member of the local Audubon Society and the Nature Conservancy. Paul has been married to his wife, Cheryl. I understand they were married at Wildlife Prairie Park by Michael Brown. Paul and his wife live in East Peoria, and I'd like you to welcome our speaker today, Paul and Rick.
Thank you so much. I kind of feel like the prodigal son. But you're going to need a Bible for that, not a hymnal. That's the problem. And I feel like the prodigal son because a lot of you are like family, and I've known you for decades, and I just don't see you much. So I feel like I'm returning to where my wife and I got married 28 years ago. So today, I'd like to start with a slide here that basically gives you the purpose of my talk. If I can find it. That's the group that I was a part of with the Master Naturalist, but I want to start right there. A little patch of prairie, opening our lawns to nature. And basically, the purpose of today's talk is to encourage homeowners to convert some of their lawn turf to a prairie patch. And I like this quote about thinking of your lawn as an area rug, not wall-to-wall carpeting. And too often, people think of their lawn and their landscape as wall-to-wall carpeting. There's a nice swallowtail, too. Let's see if I can get this to go. So in 1817, the Public Land Survey looked at Illinois and noticed how much yellow was prairie. So everything you see in yellow there was native prairie plants in 1817. And we have a lot of records of what people described the prairie as an endless ocean of grass, and they get disoriented. And not only would they get disoriented, but this 18th century English idea of the perfect landscape did not fit the Midwest. And if you tried to take a picnic basket out into the prairie, you would soon be inundated by katydids and bugs and insects and mosquitoes. And so the landscape of the Midwest didn't really fit this kind of 18th century perfect garden idea. But anyway, that's how much prairie there was, which was an amazing amount, and now we're less than 1% of prairie in the state of Illinois. Let's see if I can get this to work. Sorry. So basically, I planted 180 plugs in my backyard prairie in 2000. And it was hard to find native prairie plants. I had to look around. I found this tiny little town called Niantic, Illinois, which is near Decatur, I think, or Springfield. It's literally out in the middle of nowhere. And they were selling prairie plants for 90 cents a plug. And I bought 180, and I decided to do like a Tom Sawyer thing. Instead of painting the fence, we're going to have a prairie plug planting party. Say that really fast. And so I got some friends, and we planted 180 plants. And I had it all lined up and exactly where every plant would go and how visually pretty it would be and all this fun stuff. And it turned out okay, but after a while, the prairie decides where to go. And I love this idea of it's not egocentric, it's ecocentric. So if we're ecocentric, ECO, then we do what the land tells us to do, not what we want it to do. Because the egocentric was my amazing design of where I wanted all my prairie plants to go. But no, they decided, not me. That's what I learned after about 5 years of prairie. So I also brought along a book with me called Nature's Best Hope. It's by a guy named Doug Tolomei, and he has this idea of a homegrown national park. And the homegrown national park basically ties in my little prairie, with your little patch, with your little butterfly and bee garden, and it's all being connected. And that's what we're trying to do with Homegrown National Park, and that's what he's trying to do here. He gives a lot of great ideas for people like you and I who maybe don't know a bunch about this. I mean, I was an English teacher most of my career, and so I'm a neophyte, and if I can do it with barely, I don't even have a green thumb. I'm pretty sure my thumb is brown. But if I can do it, anybody can do it. So there's a bit of my prairie. We are a part of nature. And one of the things I learned about the prairie is from the very earliest springtime to the very latest of the fall, there's some plant flowering at that time of season. And it's amazing. And it starts with the spring prairie columbine, a beautiful plant. You'll see this very early on in the prairie. And then from these guys, we'll get spiderwort, and I love this. They have a new flower every day, a gorgeous plant. These are all native. Landsleaf coreopsis comes later in the summer, or early summer. And there's some around our mailbox. Of course, purple coneflower. And my wife and I had time to walk around your church property and saw a lot of purple coneflower. I love your compass plant. You have a nice patch of compass plant, Joe Pye weed. You have a lot of great native plants around here, which is wonderful. Rattlesnake master, that's an interesting plant. It looks like it's straight from Mars. We love royal cutchfly. We look for it every year. It's a beautiful little red flower. And the bergamot, I noticed you had some bergamot behind me this morning with some daisy fleabane and some brown coneflowers. And then Jerusalem artichoke, I never planted that. It just decided to arrive. And it's a native prairie plant. So I'm like, okay. And goldenrod's a keystone plant. So as much as we think it's a weed, it's actually a keystone plant for prairies. But the problem is that when they start to bloom, we all start getting our allergies, and we blame it on goldenrod, but it's not goldenrod that's causing all those allergic reactions. It's a totally different plant. It's ragweed. But ragweed pollinates at the same time as goldenrod, so everybody thinks it's goldenrod. And so it's a plant that's gotten a bad rap, even though it's really great for nature. Culver's root. So I'm going to fly through these. Here's our big blue stem at sunset. We love that red that beautiful color from the sun hitting the big blue stem. So we just enjoy our native plants. Prairie dock, a great plant. And then late in the fall, we'll get the New England aster. And then there's tons of wildlife. There's my daughter, she's in law school now, so this is a while ago, looking at our eastern bluebirds and the goldfinches that love the purple coneflower seeds, dragonflies, black swallowtails, all kinds of stuff, tiger swallowtails, tree frogs, rabbits. We'll even get some hawks in our backyard. And this is a typical suburban backyard in East Peoria, so I have to be kind of careful with my prairie burns because I don't want to burn down any neighbor's house. I don't want to burn down my house. Let's start there. And then I get some friends to come over, and we'll burn a little of the prairie. It looks beautiful in the wintertime. So I love Prairie. There's some of my own photos. But I really wanted to get to this today. How can we overcome barriers to converting lawn turf to prairie? How do we get people to do this? And I love the fact that your church as a community has done this with your landscape here. I love that. But the number one thing that I've noticed with people is basically enlarging our aesthetic. You know, what's our sense of beauty? And how can we change that sense of beauty? Some would say that this prairie is beautiful. Others say it was weedy and unkempt. And I'll have buddies of mine come over and say, when are you going to mow that weed patch? Right? And I mean, they're teasing, but there's kind of a little bit of truth there from what their point of view is. And then some would say, this lawn is beautiful, right? I look at that and I see a lot of chemicals. I see a lot of water. I see a lot of fertilizer. I see a lot of herbicides. And there's nothing growing on it. And in fact, years ago, my wife knows this story, our neighbors have a lawn like this just across the street from us. And the little girls knocked on our door and they said, in the cutest way possible, can we go into your backyard and catch lightning bugs? And I was like, what? Of course you can, go ahead. And there's tons of lightning bugs coming out of our prairie and coming out of everywhere. And I'm like, well, they got a yard, it's just across the street. And of course, there's nothing. There's no lightning bugs. There's nothing coming up. So the kids come to our yard to catch the lightning bugs because they're not in these yards, right? So, but other people would say this is beautiful, right? And that's what their aesthetic is. So can we make room for both types of aesthetics? That's what I'm asking for. I'm not saying eliminate one and have the other. We need a place to walk. But when we look at a home like this, is there a room for a prairie patch in something like this? Yes. By the way, we have the gallery back here. I think of the Muppet Show. And then, descriptive landscape terms. What do people find attractive? What do people find unattractive? And a lot of this stuff is common sense. You know, lack of yard care, no flowers, no shade, not landscape, not mown, messy, cluttered. You can still have a prairie patch and still make it attractive and clean and neat and no junk. So I'm thinking about your neighbors here. And also think about these kinds of things. How do we balance, what's the anchor in your yard? What is it that you want people to look at? And the decorative value of it and the focal point of it, what do you want people to see in relation to things like the food web, or what's carbon sequestering, wildlife, watershed. Do you want a bioswale? Do you want to put in a little pond? I mean, there's tons of options. And how do we balance this decorative value with the wildlife and native balance? So this might be an ideal, a front yard mixing prairie plants with turf lawn. And by the way, when you plant a prairie, it's not like, okay, I'm done. You've just started, because there's a war going on there. I hate to say this in a place of peace and love, but there's a war going on there in the prairie, and a lot of that has to do with invasives, because crown vetch is a rhizome, and it's an invasive, and it will take over my whole prairie if I don't do something about it. Blackberries, which I love, those blackberry thorn bushes, they will take over my prairie if I let it. And I like them because the birds eat them, but I have to somehow keep my prairie plants in there somehow, but also keep out those invasives. And the invasives, they do want to take over the world. And what's happened with some cities is they'll plant prairie and think, well, we're done. No, that's just the beginning. So there's still a lot of care that has to go into it. I'm not sure what happened here. Let's see. Okay. So a lot of places like Nevada, they're taking out their turf because they're having water issues. Let's see what else is going on here. Minnesota, they have some pilot programs to encourage prairie. Illinois, where they can, they put in native prairie plants, that kind of stuff. So, number 2, how can we overcome barriers to converting lawn to prairie? Earlier I mentioned aesthetics, a sense of beauty. How do you change that or adapt that or enlarge that? The second idea is working with homeowners associations, because a lot of you might live in HOAs where they say no prairie plants or no this or no that. There's lots of rules. But in this case from the New York Times, this Maryland couple, they fought their homeowners association and they won. So they fought the lawn and the lawn lost. So they could put in prairie areas into their yard, even though the homeowners association said no. Okay, so let's go to this book a little bit, if this works. I'm not good with this. But the third idea is to have clear borders. How do we overcome barriers to converting lawn to prairie? So notice I do have some lawn turf, and there's a clear border between the lawn turf and the actual prairie area. So you can walk around it, and again, so your neighbors know, well, okay, it looks like they do take care of some of it. Notice the borders around this prairie area. So those are all native plants, but they put stones, sidewalk, those kinds of things, and more borders. And also another thing we have to overcome is what people think about with bees. I don't want to be around bees, or the bees freak them out, or maybe they have an allergic reaction to bees. I get that. But what Doug Ptolemy says is that out of the 4,000 native bees, only bumblebees, a mere 46 species, would sting to protect their hives. While foraging at flowers, bees are not aggressive at all. Yes, Mr. Barta.
I actually yesterday, I handed a bumblebee on a native prairie flower. They're so busy feeding, they're not in a defensive mode, and they're not going to attack you. Even if you go in there, they leave you alone.
They're all about food. Bees are responsible for pollinating 87% of all plants and 90% of all flowering plants. If they were to disappear, this would be a fatal blow to us. Another barrier to converting lawn turf is what people don't know. Well, how do I do X, Y, or Z, right? How do I start a prairie? How do I start a little prairie patch? How do I get rid of some of that little bit of lawn turf first, and what's a good way to do that? Do I use herbicides? Do I cover it? Do I get a sod remover and just remove part of the sod? There's a lot of different options that you can have for that. But Wild Ones is very good. University of Illinois Extension Office is very good. There's tons of suggestions. So I want to get to Doug's book again. His top 10 suggestions for improving your lawnscape. Number 1, shrink your lawn. Remove invasive species. Plant keystone groups. Be generous with your plantings. Plant for specialist pollinators like butterflies. Network with neighbors. That might be a little tricky part. Network with neighbors. I like my neighbors. We're on good, friendly terms. But I haven't got the, the confidence or the motivation. I'm not sure. I haven't said, prairie plants really do good in your yard. I haven't done that. I don't know if I could do that. But I love the fact of networking with neighbors. And maybe then by showing some of my plants and things in my yard, maybe that will interest them. I'm not sure. Build a conservation hardscape. Things like motion sensor lights, window wells, so toads and stuff don't get caught into your window wells. Create caterpillar pupation sites under your trees. Do not spray or fertilize, and fertilize was new for me. Doug Ptolemy recommends not fertilizing, and I had fertilized the front of our yard for a few years, but again, that's runoff, that's more nitrogen in the water, more nitrogen in the Illinois River, down into the Gulf of Mexico, and so on. Educate your neighborhood civic association, so he's got a lot of suggestions for the homegrown national park. And then I love this quote by Ken Kesey. It's a poem called The Mystery, and here's an excerpt. But the job is to seek mystery, evoke mystery, plant a garden where strange plants grow and mysteries bloom. The need for mystery is greater than the need for an answer. And that's really what surprised me so much about a prairie, is because I could go out there every morning and I would tell my wife, every morning I'm going to see something different. Whether it's a new bug I've never seen before, a new flower, a new something, there was always something going on. And it was much more interesting than just boring green grass, honestly. So we have a job to do in terms of carbon capture, right? We have global warming going on. I'm a firm believer in I don't have to be a believer in global warming. The science already tells me that it's global warming. But if I'm doing a little bit just in our yard, and we can all do a little bit, just for a little prairie patch for butterflies and bees and those kinds of things, I think we're doing our job. But I know a lot of people here are already doing what I'm recommending here, so I think I'm talking a lot to the choir. But thank you very much. That's my talk.
Thank you, Paul. Now, if everyone could join in with hymn number 207, Earth Was Given a Garden. And stand if you're willing and able, or just stand in spirit.
It Becomes More by Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern. When we take fire from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. And so we extinguish our chalice, but we take its light and warmth with us, multiplying their power by all our lives and sharing it with the world.
As you prepare to leave this sacred space, pack away a piece of this church in your heart. Wrap it carefully like a precious gem. Carry it with you through the joys and the sorrows of your days. Let its gentle glow strengthen you, warm you, remind you of all that is good and true, until you gather again in this place of love.